So we're thinking as a church over these couple of weeks leading up to Christmas about the times when the angels appeared to these characters in the Christmas account. And right now we've got to the point of thinking about this angel that appeared to Joseph. Emma read the passage in Matthew chapter 1 and verse 18 onwards. And we're going to be thinking about this message for a few moments. Many of the things that happened to him and he heard are things that we can't apply to our lives because he got told something that was specific to him. But there's a general thing going on that we can definitely learn from for ourselves in 2021. The first thing is Joseph's earthly disappointment. It's from the first few verses. It was absolutely scandalous. I know the story is familiar to you, but think about what it was like for Joseph. It was scandalous. He was betrothed to be married. He was engaged to be married to a lass called Mary. And in his mind, he knew that they hadn't slept together. He knew, as far as he was concerned, there was no chance of her being pregnant. And then the news was broken and she started to show that she was pregnant. Imagine what was going through his mind. How gutted he must have been. What he was imagining must have happened. The pain, the betrayal, wanting to know the truth, yet perhaps also partly not wanting to know the truth. Asking, why has this happened to me? His whole world, you might say, had just collapsed. I'm sure he had great thoughts of their marriage together, and now this. What would he do? The scandal. What a disappointment. How let down he must have felt. And I just wonder this evening whether you might be feeling a bit like that, or at least some experience of that in your life. Certainly we might not have ever had that exact thing happening to us, but I'm sure you've had your fair share of disappointments, your fair share of betrayals, your fair share of feeling that you don't quite know the truth of what's gone on. Your fair share of confusion, your fair share of feeling like your whole world has just collapsed. Well, that's what Joseph was feeling like. And if nothing else, we share at least one experience of it, don't we? Over this last couple of years, we've been baffled. We've been scared at times. We've been confused. What on earth's going on? What's the truth? We don't understand. In a way, our whole world has collapsed around us. Being isolated, the struggles, the disappointments of things that we couldn't do that we'd hoped to do. The leaders that we feel perhaps have let us down. It certainly at times has felt like the world has collapsed. We have experienced something of the disappointment that Joseph was feeling. It's interesting though, there is something really positive in this that we find out about Joseph. It says her husband Joseph, Mary's husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. But as he considered these things, behold, an angel appeared to him. He was a just man. Engagement, by the way, in those days was a legal thing. So in order to break an engagement, he had to divorce his wife-to-be. That's what he considered he would do. He didn't want to bring her to shame. He didn't want to get vengeance. He didn't want to put it across Facebook. He wanted quietly to deal with the situation. And it says that he considered these things. And you know, there's a good thing. When we're feeling disappointed with the world, when we're feeling disappointed with our experience, when we're feeling disappointed in others or feeling betrayed, it's good not to start just fighting back, but just to consider these things. Because it was into his slow and gentle consideration that there was a heavenly revelation. That's the next thing I want to think of. So there was an earthly disappointment, but there was a heavenly revelation. Right into his disappointment, an angel appears and speaks into a dream. You see, what really matters in life is what God has to say to us. What really matters in life might not be so much about what we're experiencing or what's happened to us, but what God has to say to us. And that's what's happening here. An angel is just a spirit created by God to bring a message, God's message to Joseph. And today, what really matters to you, I would suggest, is what God has to say to you. And the angel brings a wonderful, comforting, and reassuring message, which is nice to know, isn't it? Into all of the bedlam, all of the disappointment, all his frustration, those feelings of pain, the angel comes and brings a wonderful comfort and reassurance. And you know, if you will listen to God, sometimes it might hurt the things that he says, but I assure you that his message is always good. It's always comforting. It's always for our reassurance. Eventually, there might be pain along the way, but his plan and purpose for us is good. And so there's just a few things. In this thing that was said, this heavenly revelation, there were some important things to listen. He said, first of all, the angel said to him, do not fear. Do not fear. You know, in the age in which we're living, there is fear all around us. You might even say that fear is being whipped up. But we are told, do not fear. God is in control. So whatever's going on, whatever you might be going on in your life, whatever was going on in Joseph's life, which was pretty bad, remember that God is in control. Secondly, remember that God is at work. God explained what was going to happen. He says, what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son. This is a work of God. What's happened to Mary is a work of God. There's no other person involved. She hasn't betrayed you. This is a work of God. And his work is often unseen, but it's real. And so it's good for us to remember, yes, God is in control in those terrible situations you might face, the struggles. But he's also at work. Sometimes unseen, but he's at work. We're told that this baby is a boy, and they're to give him the name Jesus. Remember, Mary was told the same, that she must be called Jesus. And it here specifically says, Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. And actually, that's because the name Jesus means Saviour, or rescuer, or deliverer. They didn't have a name to choose. Those of you that have got children will know that painful time when you're trying to choose the baby's name. Perhaps even you've had a baby and it's been a few days alive before you've actually decided on the name. But they didn't have to choose a name. It was given the name Jesus because he will save his people from their sins. You know, when God speaks to us, he speaks to us not necessarily about the things that we're feeling at the moment, but he speaks to us about our greatest need, our greatest problem, the greatest challenge. It might not be nice to hear. You might prefer for him to speak to you about something else. But this is what God does. He speaks to us about the most important things because he wants them to be put right. And the most important thing for us is to think about our sin, the things that we do that God disapproves of, that turn away from him, that refuse to put God in his rightful place. And the other thing that the angel says is that it's going to fulfill a prophecy. The prophecy that I read right at the beginning of the service this evening, which tells us that his name is going to be Emmanuel. And I said when I read it that Emmanuel means God with us. What good news it is when in our lives God speaks. He reminds us that he's in control. He reminds us that he's at work. He reminds us of our greatest need, that we tend to just ignore if he doesn't do that. But he also says that I'm on your side. I'm with you. I care about you. God is with us. Literally, God himself had come and was born in a manger for us. That's what he cares about us that much. It was so important to God that he would provide a way for us to be forgiven, that his own son came to earth. No doubt Joseph's brain was absolutely frazzled by this point by what he was hearing, but he knew it was good news. So in all our earthly disappointments, God speaks to us about what really matters. And what really matters is the gospel, the good news, that our sin can be dealt with, that we don't need to be turned away from God when we die, but we can be welcomed into his kingdom. And even today, we can know his power at work in our lives. It's good news that stands out in this crazy, confused, pain-filled world. And the good news is all about Jesus. If that's the only thing you remember tonight, if you've come and you don't normally come, the good news is all about Jesus. Investigate him. Find out about him. You can have a relationship with him. He can forgive you for your sin. So, Joseph's earthly disappointment, his heavenly revelation, and lastly, Joseph's faithful obedience. Imagine how this visitation to Joseph changed his life. One moment he's deciding to turn away. He's going to quietly do it, but he's going to turn away from Mary. The next, he accepts her. In fact, if you just read this last verse. When Joseph woke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took his wife, but knew her not until she had given birth to a son, and he called his name Jesus. He did exactly what God had asked him to do. And friends, when God comes close to you, when you cry out to him and when you look to him, and when he speaks, and it might not be the things you want to hear, listen to what he says and obey him. Trust him and obey him. If you're wondering what the sort of things God might say, well, pick a Bible up. Find one. Dust it off if you've got one at home. Find it on the internet. Ask us. We could give you one. And start reading what God says to you through his Son, the Lord Jesus. I would encourage you, just start at Matthew and start reading. And listen to what God says to you. And trust what he says and obey what he says. God delights when people read his word and believe it and obey it. You might think today, as we stand here, what is it, the 19th of December, 2021, you might think that the greatest need at the moment is to get rid of COVID-19. Or you might think that the greatest need is to get rid of the COVID-19 restrictions, depending on your opinion. Or you might feel that the greatest need that we have at the moment is to get rid of Boris Johnson. Or the greatest need we have at the moment is to stop climate change. Or the greatest need we have at the moment is to bring global peace. These things aren't the greatest need that we have. The greatest need that we have is to hear the words of God and obey them. These are our Maker's instructions. You know, guys, children, adults, you know those gadgets that you might get on Christmas Day? And you open the box, and the first thing you do is pick out the instruction manual and throw it away, and then you try and work it out yourself. And then sometimes you get a bit struggled and you think, shall I have a look? No, I'll work it out. You know, that's what a lot of us do with God. He's given us his instruction manual, and we don't read it. The most important thing for us today is none of those other things that I've mentioned, but to hear what God is saying to us and trust his word and obey him. And like I said before, it's all about every word, right from the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation, it's all about Jesus. He came to save us from our sin. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this great message of the angel to Joseph. Thank you for the light that you brought, the hope that you brought him, and indeed the hope that you brought to the world through him. And we pray that we might know something of that hope ourselves. Grant us that faith to trust what you say. Help us to obey. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.